I didn't think too much about it when I was asked. I just said, yes, of course, I'd love to go. But then I started getting criminal records forms to fill in and prison visit forms. The prison visit form, you had to say what your relationship was to the person that you were visiting. And they told me to write down that I was his friend, even though I'd never met him. But I guess that's what we were doing, what friends do, and standing up for people. I didn't know what Troy would be like. I'd seen a grainy photo of him and heard a crackly voice on a phone interview. But that weekend, we took Interstate 75 to exit 201, just like a random, normal motorway exit, parked up at a gas station, got a load of change because you were allowed to take change in for vending machines inside the prison. And there it was, these brick gates which said Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison. It doesn't say death row, it doesn't say we kill people here. It's in scientific terminology. It's a diagnostic and classification prison. I mean, I have no idea what that means. It doesn't mean death row, but that's what it actually is. You drive down this long driveway past Corrections Lake, whatever Corrections Lake is, where the warden goes fishing. You go around the corner and suddenly you're faced with this fence that's ridiculously high and has more razor wire than you can imagine at the top of it. And these whitewashed walls that have no windows in them. It was incredibly hot. Georgia in September is still very warm and very humid. And it was like a movie. As we pulled up into the parking lot, this guy was released from jail. He was wearing these fresh khaki trousers with the straightest line down the middle of them you'll ever see, and a fresh white shirt. And he was there in the arms of his girlfriend or his wife. She was leading him to their car, and he was getting away. He'd done his time in jail, and he was being released. We were met at the gate by Officer Barabbas. If you know your Bible, there is some irony being met at death row by somebody called Barabbas. You have to go through x-rays. It's like being in an airport, but more so. You have to leave everything in the car except your coins. You literally have to turn your pockets out. I walk through with my pockets out like that. They take your paperwork, and then above the gates it says, "Make a difference." We went through this long corridor, through these, I guess you only see them in films like Terminator, these gates where you go sort of into an airlock, and then somebody who's behind bulletproof glass shuts the gate behind you, and then the gate in front of you is opened, and then you go through into the prison. For some reason, the air conditioning wasn't working in the prison that day, and we were led into this cell through the regular visiting area where, again, like a film, there was a man cradling his baby, because that's the only time he ever got to see his child, because he was in prison and his wife had brought his child. This room was a whitewashed room. It had a couple of tables and some chairs. It was about 2 meters by about 5 meters. And it turns out it was the holding cell where people are kept before they are executed. Troy had been kept there the day that I first heard about the case, the day I was making phone calls. Troy had been in that room, and he got to within 2 hours of being executed that night. There was a huge iron gate with a slot in it for a tray to pass people their meals. And eventually Troy was wheeled out. He'd hurt his ankle playing basketball, so he was on crutches and he was being wheeled around. He said, as Alistair Carmichael went up to him, he was very British and held out his hand, and Troy just said, "I don't do handshakes, I do hugs." Big hugs, it turns out. He's a big guy with a very soft voice and a huge smile. And despite having been in prison for 2 decades, he had no anger that I could see at all. He answered any question that the Amnesty people put to him. All the while we were with his mother and his sister who were there as well. And they were having a conversation like it was just a regular Sunday lunch. We'd gone out to the vending machines and we got Troy his favourite food, which was chicken nuggets with barbecue sauce. And we were asking him all these questions, and his mother was just nagging him, saying, "Your food's getting cold." I was asking him about his daily life. he had a cell not much bigger than the room we were in, with a thin mattress on a metal bed that was cemented right into the wall. He put his shirt underneath his mattress every night to keep it pressed so he looked smart. And you could just about see Davis written in pen on the pocket that had faded from years of being washed. His daily routine is either 3 hours or 6 hours of exercise. The rest of the day he would be in his cell. There's no hot water, which is fine in the summer, but it's very cold in the winter there. So they would have to shower in cold water. There was a TV that was outside the cells, and the prisoners were allowed to sort of swap who had the remote on a daily basis, so they each got to watch their favourite shows. But I started to learn that the prisoners, they never get to see beyond the walls of the prison. There are no outside windows and the walls are very high, so their eyesight starts to deteriorate. If you can't see beyond that wall for 20 years, your eyesight is going to start deteriorating. So all the prisoners wear glasses. And their ankles and their knees start to give way because they only ever walk on concrete. He was telling me that nature is precious. If a bird ever flies in through an open window, they all put their sheets up against the windows to stop it from escaping, just so they can be in the presence of something else, some nature for a while. He said if grass grows in the cracks between slabs in their exercise area, people will pick those blades of grass and cherish them just to feel something that's not concrete or metal. In 2008, he was visited by the Reverend Al Sharpton, and the prison warden let them go out into the garden, the prison garden. He never even knew it was there. Suddenly, he was out in this place on a concrete path with grass either side, and he asked the guards if he could walk on the grass. He took his shoes off, and for the first time in 10 years, he felt the feeling of walking on grass under his feet instead of concrete. And he described that to me as feeling like the Shawshank Redemption. Now, the idea of a guy who's in prison watching a film about guys in prison being released from prison just basically broke my heart. We were lucky enough to have a photo taken. The prison photographer was on duty. He paid $1.50 for a voucher that day, and we got a cracked photo because it dried so fast in the heat of us together with Troy. He was telling us he's allowed at most 7 books or magazines a week, and he had to ration his reading so he didn't finish them all on the first day. He was only allowed a certain number of stamps, so he couldn't reply to all the letters. But Amnesty ran a campaign to send him birthday cards a couple of years ago, and he had so much post that he had to go to the mailroom because it was too much hard work to bring the post to him on a daily basis. He's been described by the warden as a model prisoner because he worked on his case and he was never violent towards anyone. He only ever got in trouble twice, both times for cursing, in 20 years being in prison for something that he said he didn't do. Troy as a guy was completely amazing. His family visited him every weekend for 15 years. They only reduced that because he told them not to come every weekend because he was worried about the effect it was having on his nephew, Dejan. He was just Uncle Troy to this lad. He gave good advice. He told him to be good and to work hard at his school. He had a very strong Christian faith and an amazing family that supported him, and I think that's why he was still a positive guy. His only frustration was that those who admit their guilt find it easier to get clemency on death row than people who protest they are innocent. I've had a lot of chances to talk about Troy. This is one of the most amazing chances I've ever had. I'm very grateful to my bandmates for their support, allowing me to use our website and our Facebook page to promote Troy's case, to get people to sign petitions on his behalf. Amnesty managed to get 800,000 signatures, including 50,000 from the UK, delivered to the Georgia Parole Board this year. Despite all this, plus the European Union objecting to his execution, the Pope, former President Jimmy Carter, the former Deputy Director of the FBI, William Sessions, George W. Bush's Attorney General, and many, many other people. He was executed earlier this year. And his last words were to say that he was innocent, but also that God should bless his executioners. Okay, the future. I want there to be a legacy for Troy Davis. I don't want him to be just another in a line of people that get executed. You're students, you're busy, you have a lot of hard work to do, but I urge you to get involved in whatever cause it is that you feel the most passionate about, whether it's animal rights, gender equality, child poverty, whatever it is. If it's the death penalty, get involved, because you don't know what it's going to end up with. I started off by making a few phone calls because I heard about something on a podcast, and now I'm talking about it to you guys at the Oxford Union, and that is pretty amazing for me, and you could do the same thing. If you go to ouai.co.uk, you can see what Amnesty are doing at Oxford University. They're a very active group by all accounts. They meet at 9 p.m. on Tuesdays at the Ox Hub building on Turl Street. Is that right? And this term's focus is women's rights in Afghanistan, abolishing the death penalty in the US, Iran and Belarus, and the arms trade. The legacy of Troy for me, I think I'm going to try and do something around the death penalty in Belarus. It's the only country in Europe or the former Soviet states that still executes people, and it does so particularly brutally by taking them without warning and shooting them in the back of the head within minutes of taking them. Their families don't even get told till after it has happened. Troy's sister said that it was activism that kept Troy alive through his first 3 execution dates. He was only executed the 4th time they tried. That kept him alive for another few years, and it feels like it nearly got him out. But remember the statistic, there are 17,000 or more people on death row in the world right now. Are we just going to let them be executed? I'm pretty much finished, but I just wanted to say that the death penalty as a concept is abstract, but Troy was a real person. I was there in a room with him. He made me laugh, he made me smile. He was a humble man, a family man, a good uncle, a good brother and a good son. And the state of Georgia killed him. And this has to stop. I understand Salil Shetty was going to be speaking tonight but can't make it, but I wanted to finish with something that he said. He said, "A world free of the death penalty is not only possible, it is inevitable. The question is, how long will it take?" Thank you very much.